called to be a healer for all humanity. I am called to be a dreamer, believe in what can be. I am called to be a maker, be an instrument of peace. I am called to be a giver, of abundance I receive. I am called to be a prayer, living out the truth I seek. I am called to be everything. I am called to be. I am called to be a mother, to nurture family. You are called to be a brother, to be strength in times of need. You are called to be a neighbor, see a friend in all you meet. You are called to be
Good morning and welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Rogue Valley. My name is Wendy Wellborn and I'm one of the practitioners here at the center. And it is my privilege to welcome you all here in place of our three reverends. All of them are on a ministerial conference, and we hope they're getting much needed R&R, some rest, rejuvenation, inspiration. No one can actually serve from an empty cup, so we bless them on their trip and hope that they come back full and well. CSL Rogue Valley is a progressive, inclusive spiritual community, and we welcome each of you, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey, whatever your spiritual journey is. If you're here for the first time, we would ask that you would raise your hand so we could give you a special welcome. Anyone? Oh, wow, welcome. We have coffee and social hour after service, and we would love to talk with you and introduce ourselves, get to know you better. Our musicians this morning are Alexa Ehrlich and Lauren James. Did I get it right? I did. Oh, this is my very first time, you guys. So, all right. Thank you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Our High Watch practitioner is Nancy Clay. She is praying for our continued unfoldment, for our highest and best, for all the deep centered love that we experience in this meeting. And today, it is my privilege to welcome special guest speakers, Reverend Jim Hatton, who some of you may know, and his wife, Reverend Stephanie Clarke Hatton. And, as though it was being new wasn't enough, it's the first day of May, and we all know what that means. Is there anyone here who has a May birthday? Would you please stand up so we can sing some love to you?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. We sure do love you. Woo! Happy birthday.
Now, the business at hand, I need to remind you to turn off your cell phones or to put it in airplane mode so that we have no interruptions except for just pure love in this service. And let's take our collective deep breath and allow the music to take us into preparation for invocation. Ladies.
When the road is long and the mountain high, and all my courage has run dry, I look to the sea. That's where you speak to me as I pray, as I wait for peace to come. Hear me now. I want to believe. I need to believe. Give me the strength I need to believe. And when my soul is aching from the weight of all my fear, as I surrender, I believe. Look at my life and cry a sad, sad tear for all the things I never did because of fear. But in this moment, in your presence, I can feel the power. It's been waiting here inside of me. Hear me now. I want to believe. I need to believe. Give me the strength I need to believe. And when my soul is aching
I'd like to invite you to close your eyes and take a deep centering breath. There is only one life, one pure love, one vital creative force I call God. I am infinitely connected to it as it expresses itself in me, through me, around me, and even for me. And as I know this is true for myself, I know it is true for each of us, because there is nothing else. There is only God, only pure love, wholeness, balance, harmony, divine guidance. And as I bask in this moment of pure love and joy, I know, I don't just believe, I know that this service, this celebration unfolds perfectly, that we are all touched by this deep love of our divine Creator, that it moves forward with us as we leave this building after service, full, filled, complete. I speak a special blessing to everyone in this service, that they have that peace of knowing that God is in and through them. I speak special blessing to those who are out in the world watching us from their homes, knowing that they are loved and thought of, that they are still connected to us in every way possible. That really, really matters. And I release these blessings with so much gratitude, knowing that it is already done. And we let the law do what the law does, saying yes to all things. And so it is.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Be careful what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes our prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Be careful what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes our prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer.
I have to catch my breath. That was beautiful. For our reading today, I'm reading from Joel Goldsmith. His book is In Thunder of Silence. In 1948, a call came for me to go to Hawaii. Among other things, the opportunity came to meet one of the Hawaiian chiefs who told me about the difficulties his people experienced during the Depression and how they met together to try and rediscover the principle underlying the demonstrations made by the early tribes. One day, when the chief was pondering this question, it unfolded to him that if he were in the water drowning and could reach up and catch hold of a raft, it would save him. Then he thought, suppose I reach up and caught hold of a handful of leaves instead of a raft. With that idea came the realization that the same spirit which was in the raft was also in the leaves, and that the sustaining spirit which held him up was neither the raft nor the leaves, but the spirit itself. If you understand this point, you will see that the power, the sustaining substance, and the life are never in the effect as such, but always in the spirit itself. Let me repeat that. If you understand this point, you will see that the power, the sustaining substance, and the life are never in the effect as such, but always in the spirit itself, the law which produces the effect. This is true of every effect. Once you see that supply is not in any effect, but in the spirit, you will have the secret of Jesus' multiplying of the loaves and fishes. Then you will see that the same sustaining spirit is as much in a $1 bill as in a $1,000 bill. It's me. Sorry, lost track of myself. So it's my pleasure to be the person to introduce these two lovely people today. I'm going to start with Reverend Stephanie Clarke Hatton. Rev Steph is known as the Irreverent Reverend because she loves to expose the religious and cultural taboos around God, sex, and death, especially sex. Trained by Reverend Michael Beckwith at the Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, Rev graduated as a minister in 1998 and was ordained as an interfaith minister at the Toronto Parliament of the World's Religions in 2018. In 2000, Rev Steph founded Soul Home in Johannesburg, South Africa. It was the first New Thought multiracial ministry in South Africa consciously dedicated to healing the wounds of apartheid, and it recently celebrated its 22nd anniversary. Congratulations. Today, Rev Steph is an international speaker. She spoke at the Parliament of World's Religions in 1999 and 2018, and has taught at various CSL centers around the world, including Ukraine, Russia, and Mexico. Rev Steph has written 3 books, Down, Dirty, and Divine, A Spiritual Ride Through London's Underground, The Miss, M-I-S-S, Adventures of an Irreverent Reverend, A Spirited Guide for Rebels and Renegades. It's her autobiography. And her latest, most controversial work, an intimate sharing of her personal experience, The Sex Goddess, Debunking the Mythology of God and Sex. Now, some of you may know Rev Jim Hatton. He was the assistant to the senior minister at Medford CSL for 14 years, in 1998 through 2012. So we are so happy to have him back. Rev Jim was raised in Science of Mind as his grandmother was a practitioner. He first took Science of Mind 1, which I'm not sure what the equivalent is now, when he was 16 years old, maybe Foundations. He was licensed as a practitioner in 1985, and he's now received practitioner emeritus status. Jim attended Holmes College, Holmes Institute, and Emerson Theological Institute, and was ordained as a minister in 2010. Jim also has a published book, A Spiritual Master's Guide to Life. He is a frequent contributor to the Inner Peace column in the Ashland News, and he's a regular speaker at various CSL, Unity, and other metaphysical organizations. Rev Steph and Rev Jim currently make their home together here in Medford, Oregon. They met at the Great Pyramids of Egypt, in the Great Pyramid of Egypt in 2019. That's a mental image. And they just celebrated their first wedding anniversary on April 25th of 2022. Welcome, Rev Steph and Rev Jim. We're so happy to have you here. Please. No. It is your turn.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Jim.
And I'm Reverend Stephanie. We're so happy to be here with you this morning. We're both virgins, actually. This is our first time speaking together in church. Not that kind of virgin. So, I haven't got my glasses on, just a minute. So we'd like to share today some thoughts on the law of attraction and prayer. And I'm going to hand over to my beloved Reverend Jim, and he's going to do some teaching on that, and then I'll come up on the stage again later. Enjoy.
What a wonderful assistant. Well, good morning again. I always like to start out a prayer with giving thanks first, and that's what I'd like to do with the service, is to give thanks for all of you being here. I appreciate that very much. A lot of familiar faces to me, some new faces. What a delight. To you folks online, I know you got dressed up in your best pajamas to be here. I know that's what I do. So I want to give thanks to our wonderful audiovisual crew. We got a whole crew back there, and you guys doing that. Thank you for doing that. Alexa, and the wonderful accompanist, Lauren, that you guys are great. Thank you for being here. And Wendy, what a great job. Good job on that. I would like to thank Reverend Kimberly and Reverend Michelle for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're hopefully have a little bit of fun today. Now, you know, the Reverends are at a ministerial conference. What is that? What do they do there? Well, it isn't really a big secret, but they get together with other ministers. They usually don't talk about their congregations, so you're safe. It's okay. But they have a lot of fun, and they get kind of let their hair down a little bit because they're not on stage. They're not preaching. They're just there to learn and to grow and maybe have a little fun. Now, I'm told this particular conference has been very successful. They only had to call the police twice. That's probably not going to get us invited back. I don't know that story. So we're here to talk about praying aright. What does that mean? Well, certainly you've heard about prayer treatment. Our practitioner has been highly trained in that, and ministers too, of course. But, praying is an interesting thing. So I ask you, do you know the difference between praying in church and praying in a casino? Yeah. When we pray in a casino, we really mean it. Now, there's one story that one of my favorites I'd like to share with you. It's about this Jewish individual, and he goes to his rabbi, and he's in distress. And he said, Rabbi, you won't believe what happened to me. And the rabbi says, What? Says, my son converted to Christianity, and he's left home. Wow, the rabbi says, well, you won't believe what happened to me. And the guy says, What happened to you? He says, converted to Christianity, and he left home. So, wow, what are we going to do? Well, let's pray to God. Okay, so they pray to God, and they tell him, God says, our sons have converted to Christianity, and they've left home. What are we going to do? And God says, you won't believe what happened to me today. So what is prayer? Well, basically, traditional Judeo-Christian prayer, we know it, is asking for something that we don't have or we think we don't have. So we ask God for that. So what are some of the forms of that type of thing? Well, in ancient times, we used to sacrifice to get what we wanted. We'd sacrifice animals, sacrifice humans, and to say that that sacrifice was a gift to the gods or God to get something, a good crop, weather, whatever it is. Well, we don't really do that anymore, maybe symbolically in some cases. But what other types of prayer? Well, we have prayer with people that they say a prayer in exchange for something else. So that's maybe the more modern way to do it. There's wailing, such as the wailing wall. Okay? There is bargaining with God. God, if you give me this, I will do this for you. In Greece, if you drive around Greece in the rural area, there's all these little mailboxes, and they look like churches. And what they're from is really amazing, is that the sailors, when they get out to sea and they get caught in a storm, they will pray to God and say, if you save me, I will build a church in your name. No, this is serious. They build these little churches. That's all they could afford to build. And they're all over the landscape. So there's all kinds of bargaining with God. And then there's begging and beseeching. And a lot of us have experienced that in other traditions. Well, it's a little bit different here in Science of Mind. Okay? But the traditional form of prayer, I would say, doesn't work all that well. Maybe on occasion, yeah, something happens, we pray and it comes in, but think of all the times people have asked God for something and it doesn't happen. Why is that? Well, I'm here to tell you that the nature of God's source is not to make an exception and give us something once in a while. The nature of God's source is to give everything to us all the time. The key is, how much are we going to let in? How much are we going to accept in our lives? It's all there all the time. Holmes says that we must be the mental or spiritual equivalent of what we want to have or do or be. Abraham Hicks says we have to be the same vibration, which is consciousness, in order to experience that. So the power is not out there, because Source gives that to us all the time. Kind of like a buffet. You just pick what you want. It's always there. It's up to us to become that which we want and to accept in our lives. And oftentimes we don't do that. Why? I don't deserve it. Okay? That's for other people. What are other people going to say when I buy a new car? We put a block in front of that and we block it out. So prayer in our treatment is not about changing his mind once in a while to give us an exception. Please, God, I did this. I was really a good boy. I want this for Christmas. What it is changing our mind, changing our consciousness, because power is not in the object itself. The power is not in the physical. It is in the mental, spiritual. That's where the power lies. So I've got some ideas about how we can pray, and I call it praying aright, to give us some ideas of how we may enhance what we want to pray for. Now, one of the ideas that may be new to a lot of us, even our practitioners, is we do not have to tell God what we want. Now, that's against everything, especially traditional Judeo-Christian prayer. We have to tell God exactly what we want in order to get it. In treatment, we really don't have to tell God. Why? Because if God's source is all-knowing, omniscience, it already knows what we want. And it already knows how best to provide that for us to satisfy what we want in the experience. Wow. You mean I don't have to ask? No, but you have to get clear yourself on what you want. Okay? And the best thing to do is, since the power doesn't lie in the physical object or the experience, the power is in the spiritual. So the spiritual knows what the equivalent is on how you feel about what you want. So when we do our prayer, we do our visualizations, it's more about what we feel the experience would be. Now, we're not talking emotions. We're talking an inner feeling, a sense of what that is. And guess what? The all-knowing presence knows exactly how to fulfill that, in what way, and what's going to be best for us individually. That's a whole different concept of prayer than we traditionally understand. Now, in Source providing for us all the time, one of the best examples, thank you, my beloved wife, for this, it's like oxygen. Oxygen is always there, but we have to breathe it in, don't we? And if we don't breathe it in, what does that feel like? Well, it feels like hell. Okay, so, but it's there for the taking. And same with gravity. We don't even think about it. Gravity's always there to make sure that we're walking on the planet. It's the same with everything that we want in our life. It is there. And sometimes we take it for granted. We take for granted more things here in the Western world because we live in a world of opulence compared to war-torn countries, compared to people who are living at a subsistence level. They look at us and say, oh, you guys are ultra-rich. But we don't always think that we are, but we really are. So we don't have to ask for what we want. We just have to imagine the feeling of it. What will it be like? What is it like when we experience that? Now, in our prayer treatment, we tend to have an emphasis on what is it we want to experience or have or do or be. Okay? Now, I mentioned earlier the power of the creation is not in the physical or in the object, but it's easy to get caught up in that. Be that a new car, a home, a relationship, as Abraham Hicks says, a pile of money. And there's a tendency to say, okay, I've done my treatment, and I know it's there, and then every morning I look, no, that new car is not there. So what do? We're affirming that it's not there, right? And it's so easy to do. Again, Abraham Hicks talks about there's two sides to every prayer. It's like a stick. It's there, and then it's not there. But what I find, and what I maybe suggest to you, is instead of looking for the manifestation of it all the time, look for the way the divine, through its nature of law of attraction, how that works. And what it does is it brings everything into order, into synchronicity, to eventually produce, yes, the object or the situation. But if we start looking for how that law works, the law of attraction, and look for it, how it's working in our lives on the way to the path of the demonstration, then we're focused more on the spiritual, and we're less likely to look for that manifestation and recognize that it's not there. Because in the West, our consciousness, our race consciousness, we kind of make the physical our God. It's everything, materiality. And there's nothing wrong with material. There's nothing wrong with having it all. but we make it our God, and we falsely put our attention, our power, everything on the physical. And where the power lies is in spiritual consciousness. So if we are observing how source energy, how God is manifesting that in our lives, it becomes more powerful. So what does that look like? Well, if we're praying for abundance and we're walking down the street and we see a $10 bill, that's an indication that it's working. If we're praying for a relationship or a better relationship, and our interactions with people, with that person that we may be involved with, is working better, we start to see them in a better light. They start to see us in a better light. It's working, and we give thanks for that. If we're looking to get, it's a wonderful, many of you have experienced it, but I want a new car. All of a sudden you start seeing that style of car, that make of car on the street all of a sudden. You're nodding your head. You know exactly what that is. I do too. We start to see all those things. Guess what? That's an indication that the law is working. And the law is bringing it to us, you individually, exactly the way we need to have it, exactly for the experience we need to have it, and oftentimes, and maybe just a little bit different than we visualized it. Why? Because it's for the feeling of having that car. And it's a better manifestation because it's better for us individually, to satisfy us, to have the experience of that. And that's the key on here, is to putting the focus, calling it God on the physical, and look to the spiritual and how that works. And I'm suggesting that it's going to be such a wonderful thing when we start to do that. And looking for all those idiosyncrasies, all those things along the way that my beloved Stephanie, Reverend Stephanie, at home she calls me, I have to call her Reverend, and she's going to give you some wonderful stories on how we met and how this law works.
Thank you, Jim. That was great. Good morning again, everybody. So Jim just taught you all about prayer and keeping attention on the invisible realm rather than the physical and looking for the demonstration. And I want to talk to you about how we met and how we got married, because that's just, for me, an answer to prayer all the way along. Can I just check, who knows Jim? Who remembers Jim from when he was here as an assistant minister? Oh, lovely, there's a few of you there. And so most of you don't know my background, so I just want to tell you a little bit about that. You can hear I'm from Texas, obviously. Howdy, y'all. No, I was born in Britain. I have a slight twang because I immigrated to South Africa when I was 27. My mum and my dad got divorced, and my mum immigrated to South Africa. I went to visit her. I thought I was going to visit for a couple of months. South Africa in 1985 was still under apartheid, and the apartheid system was despicable. I didn't ever imagine I could live in a country with that kind of regime. But when I got to South Africa, I found the Science of Mind teaching, and it spoke to my heart. I knew this was it for me. This is what I'd been looking for. So I ripped up my round-trip ticket back to Europe, and I made a commitment that I would stay in South Africa and study the science of mind. So quite soon into my studies, this was 1986, I got a vision of becoming a minister and leading a multiracial church in South Africa. Now that, at that time, was actually not only impossible, it was illegal. It was illegal for blacks and whites to socialize together. And of course I did, because I'm the irreverent reverend, but I risked getting arrested by having black friends and black colleagues. And when I had the vision, I was told to go to Los Angeles and train for the ministry. So in '89, I left South Africa, went to Los Angeles and studied at Agape under Reverend Michael Beckwith. Who's heard of him or met him? Everybody here, pretty much, yeah. He became world famous when he made the movie, or he was part of the movie called The Secret. So an interesting story, in 1995, I'd been in LA about 5 years, and I had started to study at the Ernest Holmes College, where Jim also went to school. And at the World Ministry of Prayer, my best friend there was a minister called Eunice Edwards. And one day we were chatting while we were waiting for the prayer lines to ring, and she asked me if I'd ever met Jim Hatton. And I said, no. She said, well, you were both studying at the Ernest Holmes College, but he left for Oregon. And it seems that Jim left for Oregon in 1988, and I arrived in Los Angeles in 1989. So we were never in school together. But I'll never forget, Reverend Eunice said to me, it's a pity you two didn't meet, because I think you'd get along really well together. Prophetic or what? Amazing, huh? So in June 1998, I graduated at Agape, and interestingly, Reverend Kristen Hawkins, Reverend Kimberly's sister, was in the same graduation group who graduated. So I know Kristen from way back, and she started a very successful ministry in Long Beach. And in October 1999, I'd already had the call to return to South Africa and start this multiracial ministry. I was still living in LA, and I was speaking at various CSL churches about my vision for South Africa. And one of those churches was the Whittier Church, which was, at that time, the spiritual director was Reverend Linda McNamara, a friend of mine. So I got to the church in the morning, ready to do my talk about South Africa, and Reverend Linda McNamara introduced me to her ministerial intern, Reverend Kristen Hawkins. I met Kristen in 1999. No, not Kristen, sorry. Kimberly, Reverend Kimberly Hawkins, not Kristen. They both have names starting with K. So Reverend Kimberly Hawkins was Reverend Linda McNamara's intern in 1999. So when I went back to South Africa, it was the year 2000. I started my ministry. It was really successful. Mostly white people, but there were some black people, some colored people. It was exactly the vision that I'd had in 1986 of what I wanted in South Africa. And of course, Nelson Mandela had come to power in 1994. So this was 6 years later that I was starting my ministry, and it was no longer illegal. It was actually something that was seen to be desirable, to have opportunities for blacks and whites to mix together on an equal footing in community. In 2001, I ran my first pilgrimage to Egypt, and I went into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, and I fell in love. I got bitten by the Egypt bug, and later that year, Reverend Michael led a group from Agape to the Great Pyramid, and I joined the group in Cairo. I was able to fly from South Africa and meet Reverend Michael in Cairo, but I couldn't get into the Great Pyramid because I wasn't part of his group from America. So I set my intention, and I put it on my bucket list. I said, one day, I want to meditate with Reverend Michael in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. I just put it out there. I didn't know if it was ever going to happen, but that's what I really wanted. In total, I made about 16 trips to Egypt. I just loved it so much. I felt that that was my spiritual home. And as many times as I could, I went into the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid to meditate. Who's been in the King's Chamber, by the way? Anyone here? No. Okay, so only Jim would know then that the steps leading up to the King's Chamber, you know the shape of the pyramid, obviously. So the King's Chamber is right in the apex at the top. And there's a fairly treacherous pathway to get to the top of the Great Pyramid. So there are many, many steps, and then right before you go into the King's Chamber, there's a little tunnel that you have to crawl through on your hands and knees. So it's not an easy journey. But I would climb those steps like a young gazelle, and I would just say to myself, I'm going to meet my beloved. I'm going to meet my beloved. And I thought I meant I'm going to meet the Christ consciousness of my own being. And that was also true. And I had no idea that many years later, I would meet my beloved in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. So in 2005, I was getting a little burnt out with the ministry. I was on my own. I didn't have any practitioners for support except the students that I was training. And I decided to make a big change, and I moved back to Europe. So I handed my ministry to my best practitioner students, and I left for Europe. But I would always come back to South Africa, and I noticed then that my mother, who was 80 years old, was really struggling. She was looking after my stepfather, who had Alzheimer's. And I decided to quit my work in Europe and go back and take care of both of them. So I lived in South Africa, and I had a really happy life. I was very glad to be able to be of service to my mum, and also to speak again at my church. I was a guest speaker at my church, and I was writing my books, and I just loved my life. And then every now and again I'd go to Europe to do a contract. My boss didn't want to let me go, and he invited me to come back as many times as I could. So I was happy, but there were two things that were missing. I really wanted a spiritual partner, and what I would do is a friend of mine gave me some Abraham Hicks CDs, and I would drive around Johannesburg in my car with the CDs playing. And when Esther Hicks was guiding her workshop participants through how it would feel if they had their soulmate with them, how it would feel if they had that loving partner, I would replay those recordings, and I would visualize along with Esther Hicks as she was speaking, and she would say things like, imagine that your partner is looking into your eyes, or you're walking along the street, imagine that your partner just takes your hand, or you start laughing at the same jokes that only you know. So I would really visualize that, but not in a way that's like, I gotta have it, just like, that would be so nice. So there's an easy, relaxed feeling about it. The other thing that was missing was that I couldn't get back to America because of some visa complications that I had when I was studying in the US. And I had a spiritual coach, an American man who lived in London, and he said, Steph, you need to get back to America. And I said, I can't, they won't let me in. He said, have you tried filling out an application for a visa? I said, no, of course not. Actually, that is a prerequisite. For a Brit to get into America, you have to get a visa. So he hung out on Skype with me. He held my hand while I filled out my visa application. That was towards the end of 2018. And things started really shifting in 2019. January 2019, a friend of mine called me from America and said, Steph, Reverend Michael is taking a pilgrimage to Egypt in June 2019, June this year. She said, it would be so great if you can come and we can hang out together in Egypt. And I just knew I had to say yes. I had to say yes to that invitation. And it was an instant yes in my heart, and then the thought was, well, how am I going to pay for it? And then the very next day, I unexpectedly received exactly the amount of money to pay for the trip. So obvious that I was meant to be on that trip. So these are the signs and the synchronicities that Reverend Jim was talking about. These are the things to look out for on the way after you've made your prayer and made your spoken your treatment, and then you're not looking for the treatment to manifest itself exactly the way you want it, but you're looking for the signs along the way. Jim later told me that when he heard about the trip to Egypt, he also had an instant yes in his heart, and he knew he had to be on that trip. So here I am resisting applying for a visa, but my spiritual coach is helping me. And then a friend of mine in Boston said, Steph, I'm getting married in August 2019. Will you come to my wedding? And I said, you know I'd love to. You know I'd love to be back in the US, but it's probably not going to happen. I hope you'll do a live stream, and I'll watch it on the live stream. So I sent in my visa application, plucked up my courage, sent it in, got called for an interview at the American Embassy, and the US official said no. She declined my application. And I was so sure I was going to get it, and I was obviously wrong. But she did say, you can send it in for further review. So she was not going to be the only person that was going to make the final decision. She gave me a bit of leeway there. So this was April 2019 when the visa got turned down. I didn't send my passport in for review because I needed it to go to Egypt. So I got to Egypt, and on the very first morning of the first morning that we went into the Great Pyramid, we went in for a sunrise meditation. There were 68 of us in the group. We all climbed those steps to the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, and then we sat around the side, or we stood, and Reverend Michael was in the middle leading us through a meditation. I wasn't aware, excuse me, I wasn't aware that I was standing next to Jim. He was one of the 68 people in the group. I was so excited, like, this is my bucket list. This is what I wanted. In 2001, I wanted this. I wanted to be in the Great Pyramid with Reverend Michael meditating. I didn't notice Jim. I was far too excited about my bucket list. But Jim noticed me. And in fact, the first photograph he took in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid on June the 12th, 2019, I am pretty much filling the frame. He saw me. I didn't see him. 2 days later, I did notice Jim. We were on the Nile on a boat going across to the Temple of Philae, which is the temple of the goddess Isis of Egypt. And for those of you that know a little bit about Egyptology, you might know that Isis is the goddess of sex, love, and marriage. And that's when I started talking to Jim. So we had a short conversation. We found out that we were both CSL ministers, and that we were both trained by Reverend Michael Beckwith. That was our common connection. Very short conversation, and then 5 days later, it was the 19th of June, I was sitting in the restaurant on my own there's something else that happened before that. We were doing an early morning meditation at Sharm el-Sheikh, which is a resort by the Red Sea. So Reverend Michael said at 7 o'clock in the morning, we would sit by the Red Sea and meditate together. So I happened to be sitting next to Jim. And then later that evening, I was sitting on my own at dinner and sitting at a table for two, and I was just busy eating and journaling, and Jim came up to me and said, "Can I join you?" And I was really dismissive, like, "Yeah, okay, I'm just finishing, but go ahead." And so he sat down and we started talking, and he said that he loved to write, and I said, "Me too, and I've written 3 books." And he said, "Oh," and I said, "Actually, I've got one of them with me." The sex goddess. So I showed Jim my book, and his eyes bulged out of his head, and he said, "I'd really love to read a book like that." Yeah, well, it's autobiographical, so it's quite interesting. It's not often that a minister will talk about her sex life before she became a minister, and while she was a minister. Then Jim suggested that we go outside and sit outside. And so we were by the shores of the Red Sea. The wind was rustling through the palm trees. There was a full moon in the sky. It was really warm. The lights were on around the pool. It was so romantic. I knew something was up. And Jim said to me, "Do you ever come to America?" Let me tell you the story of me in America. So the visa story, I said, "Nah, I don't come to America. I can't get a visa." And Jim said to me, "Don't worry, I'll marry you, and then you get your visa." And he was trying to be a good guy, be a good friend, but I knew in my heart he meant it. I knew he meant it. So what does a girl do when she gets a proposal for marriage from a man she hardly knows? She panics and she runs for the hills. So I knew he meant it, and I was really scared. Like I told you, this is what I'd been praying about. This is what I'd been listening to Abraham Hicks and visualizing. And then when it happened, it was totally scary. So when we said goodnight that evening, I went back to my hotel room, and I was just standing in front of the mirror, and the voice said, the voice within me said, "This is the one. This is the one. This is the one you're going to spend the rest of your life with." Oh, it's him. Oh, I met him. Oh, that's weird. It was just such a weird experience, but also profoundly truthful. Like I knew that it was the voice of truth. I pretended not to know for the rest of the trip. Poor Jim, I really gave him a hard time. So I would deliberately not hang out with him. I was so scared of what was in front of me. But we did decide that we would Skype when we got back to our respective homes. So we we started to Skype a little bit. First of all, it was just maybe once or twice a week, and then it got really hectic. And after about a month, Jim proposed to me on Skype. And he showed me the ring that he had bought for me. And I said, when I saw the ring, I said, how did you know that I like white gold? I don't wear yellow gold, I only wear silver or white gold. And how did you know that I don't like big diamonds because they catch on my clothes? He had given me a ring that was white gold, obviously with the little diamonds set in the band. And he said, well, I didn't know. I got this ring 5 years ago. I got the ring because I was making a statement to the universe that I wanted to be married, I wanted to be with my soulmate. So you can see how the Spirit, I hope by now, was orchestrating everything unbeknownst to us. So what do I need to tell you now? So anyway, I'm going to have to fast forward because I know we've got to move on with the service, but we had another miracle right before COVID, before COVID lockdown. Jim and I decided we wanted to get married in South Africa in April of 2020. So all the plans were going ahead, and then we got the announcement that Jim's flight was cancelled to South Africa for the wedding, and we knew that South Africa would go into lockdown on the 26th of March. So I called my travel agent, and she booked me on the last flight out of Johannesburg to America, and I got the last seat as well. So I got to America just before COVID lockdown. And we decided to get married on the same day that we had planned in South Africa. So it was going to be April 25th, 2020 in South Africa. And we got married on April 25th, 2021 here in Medford. We decided to stop waiting for the opportunity to get back to South Africa and get married here. And so we celebrated our first anniversary on Monday. And this is our first time on stage together speaking at a CSL church. So I feel like I'm living in the dream. This is awesome how everything has come together so beautifully, and I'm hoping that what I've said has been an inspiration to you. I just want to quickly go over what Jim said about how to pray aright. So the first thing is get clear on what you want and write it down if you want to do that. That makes it more concrete. Do your treatment and then start watching for the signs. Number 3, start watching for the signs. They could be small signs, but that's okay, they're still signs. And as Jim was saying, acknowledge the power that's in the non-physical, not the physical. So when you see the signs, you have to, oh yeah, thank you. The power is working. The non-physical power is working. And then number 5, give thanks. Give thanks that your treatment is working. So the more you give thanks, the more the energy can flow through your experience. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to me. So let's join together for our healing treatment. Just straighten your spine. Make sure both feet are flat on the floor. Deep breath. And bring yourselves fully present into this now moment. Just turning aside from everything that's been taking place today. The things we've heard, the things we've experienced, the songs we've listened to. We're letting the past be in the past. We are allowing what was to be what was, and we're here now. Acknowledging the one power, the one presence, the one life, that which some people choose to call God, universal presence, divine mind, Holy Mother Father, great creator, the all in all, the omniscience, omnipotence, the omnipresence, the omni-activity. And I am that. I am that. I am a unique individualization of that power. And so too is every sacred soul in this building today, and every sacred soul who is tuning into the live stream. Each of us is another magnificent way that the power shows itself, that the power shows off in the universe. And I know that we are united in consciousness, always have been, always will be. We are here by divine appointment this day. This is exactly the perfect configuration of souls required and desired for each of us to take a quantum leap in consciousness. such that our entire life experience is transformed, lifted, expanded, moving ever forward into our greater yet to be. And I speak my word now for every beloved being in this ceremony, knowing that each one is the beloved. Each one is the beloved. Each one is filled full with everything necessary to live a life of purpose, fulfillment, to live a life that is beyond their wildest dreams. And wherever there is any appearance of conflict or discord in relationships, knowing right now that each sacred soul in this room is the very heart, the mind, the voice of compassion, forgiveness, understanding, letting go of what was, letting go of that which no longer serves, letting go of anything that would seem to stand in the way of oneness, of complete communion. And wherever there is any appearance of ill health or disease or pain or suffering in the physical body temple, knowing right now that the power of wholeness is having its way with each sacred soul in this space. The power of wholeness knows how to heal. It knows how to bring all that is necessary to every individual cell in the body temple. Declaring that everyone here is a vital, radiant, glowing, alive representation of the Most High God Goddess. Each one here is healed and whole in every respect. Healed and whole. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. And wherever there is an appearance of any kind of lack or deficit or poverty or debt or pain around debt, wherever there's an appearance of not enough, declaring that this is simply an appearance and it is not real and has no truth to sustain it, knowing that each one here is an abundant child of the infinite, an abundant recipient of all of the good in the divine storehouse. So I'm declaring that there is an opening taking place right now, even as this word is spoken, an opening to greater life, greater abundance, greater prosperity, more of the goodness of the divine that has been promised. Whatever was, was. The pain, the poverty of the past is now over and complete. And each one here steps forward as a new being in spirit this day. A new being. A new being. Made brand new. Born again. The past is not the precedent. And a new life is being birthed right here amongst every single being in this congregation. New life is being born. And that divine purpose that each of us came in with, that sacred purpose that only we can fulfill, that purpose is upon us now. So I'm declaring for each one here exact divine guidance regarding where to go, what to do, who to speak to, regarding every single step of that purpose unfolding. There is divine prompting, signs in the universe, there is all kinds of information now flooding into consciousness regarding that great purpose that each one here is to fulfill. The difference that each one here is to make in this lifetime, in this incarnation. Everything is working together for our individual and for our collective good. And I bless this sacred ministry, CSL, in co-creation with unity, and know that this divine idea of oneness is spreading, radiating, and filling the universe. And that this sacred space here this day is the very foundation for healing, for love, for joy, for reconciliation to be birthed anew upon the planet. So I do give thanks for this word spoken and know that it is already law in the universe. It is already set forth as law. And I give thanks and release it now, and I simply allow it to be. And so it is. Amen.
I celebrate my abundance today. By giving this gift, I show my faith. As I open my heart, my world becomes a better place. I release all fear as I share gratefully. This love that I give always gives back to me. Knowing my oneness with everything else, I know that all that I give to myself. I celebrate my abundance today. By giving this gift, I show my faith. As I open my heart, my world becomes a better place. I release all fear as I share gratefully. This love that I give always gives back to me. Knowing my oneness with everything else, I know that all that I give to myself. Knowing my oneness with everything else, I know that all that I give to myself.
Can we have a great big round of applause for the musicians and Rev Jim and Rev Stephanie? That was so fun, and it is my honor to be here with them on their first time and my first time. And anyway, it's now time for our spiritual practice of sacred giving. I have a testimony of this myself, so I know that what I give forward comes back to me like 3,000-fold. So if you are inclined to give, I would ask our ushers to come forward, and I would invite you to repeat our giving affirmation after me. Graciously, I give from a place of love, knowing that as I give, so do I richly receive, and so it is. You can write your check either to CSLRV or Medford Unity. If you prefer to give your gift in cash, please choose the designated envelope that's in the pews. If you prefer online, there's an online button on our Facebook, and you can also go to our CSL Rogue Valley website, cslroguevalley.org.
Every breath, peace of mind.
I'm going to embarrass Alexa a little bit, but I was just remembering when you first started singing for us and how young you were. Like how grown up and beautiful she is. I'm so proud. So before I let us go to our coffee and social hour, I have a few announcements. There's a new prospective new members class coming up from 12 to 1:30 after service on May 15th. Come learn about what it's like to be a member of CSL and Unity, and bring any questions you might have. There's a sign up in the social hall. And here's one that I can give a big shout out to because it was secretly one of my favorite courses. Reverend Bonnie Anderson will be starting a 10-week Roots of Science of Mind online. It was my favorite class that I never knew would be my favorite class. So come find out about the founders of New Thought, the teachers of Ernest Holmes. And it will be, it begins May 19th, and there's a minimum deposit online of $50 this week. So this would be the early bird option for you. We also have a 2-day forgiveness workshop on June 4th and 5th, facilitated by our own Kathy Green. Yay, Kathy. Sign up is also in the social hall. We have a weekly newsletter there's a sign up for that in the Bosworth Hall. And you can also sign up at cslroguevalley@gmail.com. Also, as a prayer practitioner here, I would invite you that if you have any specific need for prayer, we have a box with prayer requests in the back. It will be distributed out to all the practitioners, and we will hold prayer for you for a week or more if you require it. And we can even reach out to you if that's something that you would like in person. We are willing to do that. So please make use of this. It's amazing. Now, as I said, there's coffee and soup. Michael Sunday, what kind of soup do we have today?
We have a Korean pepper pot and homemade clam chowder.
Ooh. And before I let us close out with our song by our wonderful artists, I'd just like to bless us that we all go forward today and throughout this week remembering that we are infinitely loved. Would you like to stand and sing?
Stand